Hello everyone, welcome in. This is section 3.2, weapon design to make your character stand out, and OKKU's Coloso class, how to design stylish and trendy characters for illustrations. So welcome in guys, it's been a little bit. We just celebrated 100 subscribers, thank you all again so much for that. It's been a little bit since my last Coloso updates on most of these classes, but I'm going to be pounding them out as of recent. There might be another delay upcoming as I'm actually getting ready to move into a house with a couple roommates. So I'm going to be getting more square footage and a lot more room to work on my creative endeavors for cheaper. So really good deal, and I'm really looking forward to it. But that's going to be closer towards the end of the month here, coming next week. So I might be a little inactive for a couple days, but otherwise business will continue on as usual with more Coloso classes and other content coming up. I'll also probably end up streaming consistently on Saturdays, usually because I have the afternoon of Saturday off. We can go out into the evening for the live stream, and I'll be working on drawing personal content to add into the Coloso files and stuff, or just working on other content, or just taking a break with you guys and just chatting, maybe playing games. It's just going to be a little loosey-goosey as of now, but for sure I just want to really focus on nailing down a consistent day that you guys can really expect my live stream. Tune in and ask me whatever you want to ask. But in any case, that's the full rundown, and you can always keep in mind you can help add to the next subscriber tally by clicking the subscribe button, notification bell if that's your thing, if you want to be notified of my uploads. Either way, I really appreciate the most recent subscriber goal that we've reached, and I'm looking forward to the next one with you guys. So getting into the lecture for today, it was a very visual-based video. It was about an hour long, and it was mainly just watching OKKU's design process as she builds up the concept of the weapon with the character still fitting the theme. So a lot of this stuff is mainly just an association to that. If you're following along with the Coloso course itself, it might be more beneficial to tune in and watch the lecture yourself if you're really trying to focus on the practicality and the physical approach to how OKKU designs the weapon, because most of this is just going to be important considerations that she notes when designing this. So getting right into the notes, one of her most common tools for designing the weapon is actually the symmetry tool. You can easily design elements and especially ornaments to then add to a weapon, but it really helps when you have a strong sense of symmetry in order to feel like the weapon is balanced one way or the other. Especially for ornaments which have very particular small details, it just helps to really save you a lot of time and effort when using the symmetry tool. Getting a little bit more into the details of the weapon, the interior details of objects should complement the overall outline, because like the characters that we worked on in the past section, the outline is going to give you the most strength of the impression of the character. With that, use thinner lines from the figure's outline for the interior details, because you want the focus, like said, to really be on the outline of the weapon rather than the interior details. Thinner lines will help do that and will also create a softer impression of the details inside of the weapon. Irregular patterns of length and angle in the outline create a lot of depth and a lot of interesting gaze upon the weapon. So instead of keeping different segments of the weapon in the same proportions, the same length, and generally looking at more rectangular, you want to really give a lot of depth and a lot of shape to the outline of the weapon. It'll make it more dynamic, and it'll give you a lot more room to express your intention with the weapon as well. And then just a general tip that she notes, you want to select the pattern, increase the selection by about 1 to 2 pixels from what you've selected of the weapon, and then fill in with color. This will help for coloring the weapon a lot easier, and it'll give you a color mask that then you can just color on top of, rather than having to really focus on coloring inside the lines. With that, metal colors, it's generally easier to use a less saturated color, just something to keep in mind. And then when drawing fantasy-esque weapons, it helps to use references to previous weapon types and styles. So if you note in a lot of MMORPGs, gacha games, anything like that have a lot more fantasy elements, most of the time they're just using a mix of weapons from different staples and cultures throughout the centuries. So you can use those references to help get you a lot of different ideas for how the weapon can possibly look. I'll list some of the references on screen that you can use, but it's just good to do your studying about what weapons were previously used in the past and how you can use those styles to create better ideas for your own weapons. Utilizing elements from other designs can save on time. You don't want to do this too much, as this can make all of your designs start looking homogeneous and really boring and bland. But you can utilize a lot of the underlying elements that they use, maybe some of the line work, how the materials look, stuff like that. When lines of the outline touch each other, the shape becomes a little less accurate and sharp, and you want to make sure that you separate your parts clear and distinct in the outline, like said, because you want your outline to have a lot more depth, because you want it to look a lot less homogeneous overall, and a lot more interesting to gaze upon rather than just this big blob of a shape, because you didn't separate the parts of the weapon too distinctly. So keep that in mind. Color scheme is second to appeal in figure, but don't overcomplicate it, because an overcomplicated color scheme can ruin the underlying theme that you've built upon with your character. Remember that the weapon is meant to complement the theme of the character, not outshine it. And then the priority elements in order of importance, with the most important one, like mentioned, that overall silhouette. This will help complement the intention of your character, because their weapon will be a visual narrative about themselves, rather than its own sort of separate thing to gaze upon. Next comes specific details and the separation of the overlapped lines. Remember that you can lose a lot of the figure of the overall silhouette by not paying attention to the specific details and how that's affecting your silhouette, so keep that in mind. And this complements the idea of the figure in general. And then third most important, or second in appeal to the figure, is going to be your color scheme. Like I said, make sure it complements the theme that you're really supporting with your character. And then keep in mind when you're designing your weapons, you still kind of want to ground them in a sense of realism, like we did with characters, and balance, and that's to keep the weight between your ornaments and the framing in mind, with the big objects attached to the small ones. If you're not aware, most weapon design, at least with OKKU's approach, starts with designing an ornament that's central around the theme of the character or the theme of the weapon, and displays a lot of the patterns and sort of style you're going to design your weapon around. So by designing an ornament and then adding it on top of a blade, no matter the length, the staff, anything, you can start designing different weapons that are associated with the theme because you design them around the ornament, essentially. With that in mind, you want to keep the realism in a sense. So to use her example in her Coloso lecture, OKKU has like a character with like a staff / a wand weapon, and it has this huge ornament on the top. But you have to keep in mind, like in real life, or considering it within the context, like if it's this big metal ornament, it can't just be attached to like one of the small flimsy parts that are much thinner on the staff, otherwise it would just fall off and break in certain parts. So make sure that if there's a supplemental weight and context of the weapon, that it's being supported by the rest of the weapon itself. That's essentially what this means. So a quick summary to the main major points that she goes over. First and foremost is to prioritize the outline of the figure using references in a general manner. Keep in mind, you don't want to be copying directly from the references you use. Just filter out the elements you do want to use or that might be stronger versus the ones that you maybe don't want to use or maybe aren't beneficial to adding to your design. Next, consider the colors that complement the theme of the ornaments / weapon. Remember that complementary to the weapon should be the color scheme, and the ornaments the sort of theme that's running to the weapon, because the weapon is complementary in nature to the theme and the design of the character that you've developed. And then last, use symmetry and intentional design elements to emphasize a clean and distinct outline, just make it much more interesting and easier to view. And then the self-assigned homework, which is not only what OKKU did in the lecture, but she directly states would be beneficial to do after you've designed the concept art of your character, is to use references to create a strong ornament that ties into the theme of the character made in 3.1, and then use the ornament as a reference for refining the design of the weapon for the character. Remember, by designing that ornament first, it helps develop a central theme for the weapon to tie back to that is also associated to the character as well in color scheme and in central ideas. So that was section 3.2. Like I said, not a lot of notes in for this class. However, it was very important in complementing the work that we've done so far in 3.1 and helping really build the concept art of our character so far and making sure that it's still supporting that central theme that we've designed it upon. With that, as always, you can follow me on any of my socials to keep on top of future uploads, as well as avenues to communicate with me about any questions you might have in regards to the notes or with any past lectures as well. Feel free to just chat me up. I'm normally not doing anything, or I'm normally working, so I'm more than happy to help and assist in making sure that the intentions behind my notes are very clear and laid out for you guys. With that, thank you guys so much for joining into this lecture review, and I hope to see you in the next one as we start smoothing out the design, quite literally, of our concept art for both the character and the weapon, as we start pushing our concept art more into refined character design. And finally, as always, I hope you guys have a good day. Bye-bye now.